What once was an imperfection that disqualified us in our minds became what qualified us for whatever God has brought us to. And sometimes it will seem in a way that our progression is delayed. There's a bigger purpose over it all. And it's not so much about the length of time or the timely manner of things. It's more as so that God's glory has to happen, and it can only happen through this way. Even though we have receipts in history of God coming through for us multiple times in the past before, we can still come to a point where we're just going to doubt him again and again and again. It's just the magnitude of how the problem seems to us. It makes us doubt him again and again and again, but yet God comes through for us over and over and over and over again. Like when we get so in tune to our routine of life, of how things are running in our life, we don't see the impact of the weight on us until somebody else comes along and tells us, hey you guys, it's me Nat. I am back with part 2 of my Exodus series. I'm just going over what I picked up and what God taught me after reading Exodus, the entire book of Exodus. So I think I left off on talking about the breakthrough being a process. So I'm going to actually move on and talk about chapter 7. So in Exodus chapter 7, we got that God qualifies our imperfections for the calling. So whatever God is calling us to, that he qualifies our imperfections. I got that prior God used Aaron to speak and do signs because Moses was clumsy with his words. Now in chapter 7, I noticed that Moses was actually talking and speaking before Pharaoh. And now Moses is speaking and Aaron is doing the miraculous signs. What Aaron thought was something that unqualified him for the calling, God ended up perfecting to a point where I don't know if he even realized he was speaking, but it got to a point where his imperfections were perfected for the calling. So he's up there speaking before Pharaoh, not even stumbling over his words. God perfects what we think are imperfections, what we think we can't get over, what we think automatically disqualifies us for whatever he's bringing us through. He will perfect it so much so in a way that we don't even realize it's perfected. God basically qualifies our imperfections for whatever he's bringing us through. What once was an imperfection that disqualified us in our minds became what qualified us for whatever God has brought us to. And God became the mouth for Moses, the one who stuttered over his words. The very thing that was his weakness, his flaw, his imperfection, God perfected it through his calling. He started with the flaw, but the flaw became perfected once he followed through with his obedience despite his stubbornness. Something else that I picked up was that God purposely hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he could multiply his miraculous signs and wonders through Egypt, so that his glory could be seen throughout Egypt. You would think that God would have wanted his people free quickly, but the stubbornness of Pharaoh would had to happen so that his glory could be revealed, delaying their freedom. Despite the journey, despite how long it may seem that we're in it for, God's glory has to happen regardless. It is all for God's glory. Yes, we get a benefit in it too, in a way, as Moses developed a very, very great character at the end of his journey. But God's glory at the end of the day has to happen. And sometimes it will seem in a way that our progression is delayed. There's a bigger purpose over it all. And it's not so much about the length of time or the timely manner of things. It's more as so that God's glory has to happen, and it can only happen through this way. When we focus so much on the timing and focus so much on it's being delayed, we don't see that God is making this out for his glory. Okay, so the main topic of Exodus is deliverance, of God being our deliverer. God will deliver you out of what the devil meant for evil. It will be very trying as you have to wait it out. Timing. You think the moment has come just for it not to be time yet. You question if God will really do what he said he would do. Doubt overtakes us, but he keeps reminding us to remain faithful and trust him. And a lot of times when God's getting ready to deliver us in something, the timing of how the progress is, the timing on the progress can be so definite that the setbacks can make us think that God does not really have this for us. The journey, the deliverance is a process. God will deliver you after your faith has been tested and refined. Sometimes the threat appears again and again, and you question God, what was the reason? It's to refine and perfect your faith so that you know how to fall face down and surrender your trust in him. Will we think he failed us, or will we continue to trust him, knowing if he did it before, he would do it again? I noticed throughout the journey of the people in Moses that God would bring them through something multiple times, but yet they still doubted him when they got to the next point. So it's like the receipts that they had of multiple testimonies that they have of him delivering them from something before, or providing for them in something before, kind of goes out the window when they get to a point where they just doubt again. Sometimes it's just how big the problem seems to us, even though we have receipts and history of God coming through for us multiple times in the past before. We can still come to a point where we're just going to doubt him again and again and again, because it's the magnitude, how big the problem seems to us. It makes us feel that way. And the people went through that multiple times, where they were for example, they made it out of Egypt. They became very hungry. They're like, what was the reason for this? Well, we can get out of here and starve to death. So they're thinking that God's not going to provide for them food. God provided them, I believe it was called manna, for them to eat. So then God did that. They got to a point where they became very thirsty. They're like, oh my gosh, are we going to sit here and just die of thirst? And God provided them water. And then the time where they came upon Pharaoh again at the Red Sea. They're like, oh my gosh, what was all this for? We're going to die. It's just the magnitude of how the problem seems to us. It makes us doubt him again and again and again, but yet God comes through for us over and over and over and over again. Like I said, through that process, he's refining our faith. He's making sure that our foundation is made strong. In chapter 14, verses 14, this stood out to me: to be silent when faced with difficulty, and the Lord will take care of it. A lot of times in the midst of our doubts, I feel like we just need to be silent and let God do his job, not let the doubt become a fear. Sometimes we just need to shut ourselves up and just be silent and let God do his work. And sooner than we know, we're going to be on the other side of this thing. God allows for certain things to happen so that we can believe once we are on the other side of it, so that our faith can be established and our faith can be made stronger. Exodus chapter 14, verses 31, it literally says, Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians after they crossed the Red Sea. So the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. We have to remember to praise God and thank him once he gets us through it, once he gets us delivered out of that thing. Some of our sins can be passed down from generation to generation, but I kind of seen it as a way of generational curses. Someone's sin from one generation can be affected from that one sin. When it talks about the inequities of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation, so one person can be affected from the sin that their great parents did. When it says that God knows you before the womb and knows everything, since the beginning of time, he literally does, because there was a point where the people decided to create a golden calf to worship and let that calf become their idol, because Moses was up on the mountain talking to God, and it was taking them a while, and they thought something happened to Moses. They didn't know what happened to Moses, so they're like, we need to make ourselves a god to lead us. So they ended up making a golden calf. Because of this, God said that he's going to send an angel to continue on to lead them instead of God going with them. because God said that if I go with you, my anger is going to end up destroying you guys. In the early chapters, God said that, initially said he will send an angel ahead of you. That God knew ahead of time that these people were going to sin this big sin, and that God knows ahead of time. Like, he knows everything. He knows when we're going to sin. Moses' father-in-law came to visit him. That interaction, when his father-in-law seen Moses with such a huge responsibility with over the people, like, he gave him advice because he seen that was so much of a load for him to carry by himself. Moses, he was not only like leading these peoples out of Egypt, he carried the weight of the people on his back. And he was there to guide them, to like give them advice, to like settle their disputes and everything. And when Moses' father-in-law sat there and watched him like settle these people's disputes, and the people were just standing there, and he asked Moses like, what are you doing? This is so much for you to carry. And then he gave him advice to assign each like certain groups, like put the people in groups basically, and assign someone to each group to settle like minor disputes and among themselves, and bigger ones that can bring it to Moses, and Moses will take it to God, etc. And it made me realize that like when we get so in tune to our routine of life, of how things are running in our life, we don't see the impact of the weight on us until somebody else comes along and tells us that this is too big, this is too much, you need to do something about it. It's like we become immune, we become immune to the weight that we don't realize is too much for us. So God sent Jethro, which is Moses' father-in-law, right on time to let him know that this is too much of a weight for him, that he needs to do something about it. And so he gave him an advice. And Moses eventually did that. And what I love about Jethro is that he gives them advice, but he doesn't say, like, do this, it's going to be good. He says, I suggest that you do this, but take it to God at the end of the day, because God has the final say, I love that. I think that's pretty much it. I think that's it, you guys. So it literally just ended up being 2 parts. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Overall, like, I told myself that I'm going to like write down the character of God as I learn about him through each of these chapters. Overall, in Exodus, I learned that God is a reassuring God, and that when we are afraid, he reassures us. When we are nervous, stubborn, he reassures us. And he is a God that comforts us. He is a jealous God. He is a faithful God. He's a patient God, very patient. As many times these people done made the Lord upset in this journey, he was patient with them. He got angry, but you can see his patience in it as well. He sees the greater parts of us. Like, we don't see ourselves ever being able or capable of doing something, but he sees past all that, and he sees the greater parts of us that we can be in him. But those are like the main characteristics of God that I learned from Exodus. I pray that this blesses you the same way that it blessed me. Kind of gives you guys, I hope that this gives you guys like an insight of, if you have not already, what to expect to learn from Exodus, or if you have already and kind of like still like questioning what did I learn. I hope that this helps. But what I'm learning is take your time to read the Bible so that you can fully understand and break things down for yourself, so you can learn. But that is all. I hope you guys enjoyed these mini series, and I have more in stores coming for this. And yeah, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Love you guys. Peace.